everybody, Rick with Let's Level Up, and I'm here today to talk about Belfort. This is a worker placement game from Tasty Minstrel Games, and it's one where it has a lot of really fun theme and elements to it that I really am drawn to. This is a gateway game, and what I mean by that, it's very similar to Carcassone and Catan in the essence of it's very easy to learn, and it's one that you can get a lot of non-gamers playing, and I think it's one that's going to actually help bridge that gap even more so to get gamers who don't normally think that tabletop games could be for them and have them actually start playing and really enjoying themselves. The theme is a very fun fantasy theme, like I've already mentioned. Essentially, we are a master architect, and we're hired to build the city of Belfort. The only problem is that there was a paperwork mishap in the kingdom, and they've hired multiple architects all for the same job. So we're going to be competing throughout the year in order to score the most victory points based on who can build the most buildings and hire the most dwarves and or elves or gnomes to essentially establish a labor force. Whoever has the highest amount of victory points by the end of the game, which is the first snow, essentially whenever you hit winter, gets the key to the city and is declared the winner. Belfort's really fun. I really enjoy this game. We're going to sit down at the table. I'm going to show you some of the components and just briefly how it's played. It is a game that's going to play 2 to 5 players, and it's going to play in about an hour, maybe an hour 20 minutes for your first time. Very fun, very fast. I think you'll like it. So watch us and let's see Belfort. Welcome to the city of Belfort. In this game, we play a master architect, and our goal is to build the best city possible. The only problem is that there happen to be many other master architects hired along with us. So not only are we competing for labor, but we're also competing for actually valuable spots within the city in order to build our buildings. Belfort is set up in 5 different districts, which are represented by these pieces here. Each district already has a set layout that the king wants to do, and all we need to do is essentially build the buildings in the spots that they've already picked. There are different types of buildings represented by these property cards. These buildings will essentially allow us to place our homes or our property markers on a building whenever we build it. So for instance, if we were to build an inn here, we could put a white property marker down to show that we own it. Belfort is going to score on different months, or at the end of every season we'll calculate points. Depending on who has the highest number of properties in each district, you'll be awarded points for each district. Also, we can award points based on the number of workers we have, if we have the highest amount of elves, dwarves, and gnomes respectively. Each set gives a different reward value. All of this is going to be denoted on our player card, which is one thing that I really like that Tasty Minstrel does in this game. All of these different cards here that you see not only look really nice, but they tell us how to play the game. So there's not a whole lot of digging through the very well written manual on this. Let me just kind of highlight a little bit of what Belfort does in this game that I think shines in every aspect. What Tasty Minstrel does in this game, which really shines in every aspect of Belfort. This is Belfort, of course. This is the rule manual, and it's called Rules and Red Tape, a gnomish guide to royal construction methods and practices. And it starts with our letter of what happens, and essentially an apology of what actually happened with hiring the additional architects. Everything is very colorful, well written. It teaches us exactly how to play the game without giving us the headache of having to learn a new game. Now, that's probably because Belfort's designed very simply. It is essentially a worker placement game. So I have a limited number of dwarves and elves that I can actually assign to different planks, which are represented by wooden cubes or wooden squares throughout the game board. Now, planks are either one of the 5 guilds in each district, or if I have bought in a property card that has a plank on it, there. So I can put my workers there. Belfort is going to be played over a series of different phases, but essentially it goes something like this. We have the calendar phase, which we advance the calendar marker, and Belfort is going to have a standard of 7 different months 3 of those months being scoring months. So I have 3 different chances to score. So if I'm starting a slow game and I don't want to draw too much aggro, they may be able to play around the board and not necessarily win on every single district. And then at the end of that 3rd month, or whatever that scoring month is going to be, play a lot of my districts if I have the resources and kind of swoop in and take those points. Belfort is a simple game, yet one that has a lot of room for strategy. And I think this is one that if you guys aren't already familiar with it, you should be. I would call this a must-buy for every gaming group. I don't know if everybody would agree with me there, but Belfort is one of those gateway games that provides a lot of different avenues for new players to get into gaming. And those games are priceless to me. I think this is a game that's going to fit in with a lot of different game groups, and one that you can have on your shelf just in case. You can play this game with your kids, you can play this game with your regular gaming group, the rest of your family, and all have a good time, and maybe even a different experience. Belfort's use of these different guild tiles offers a lot of different replayability. Right now on the table we have the Architects Guild, the Spies Guild, the Merchants Guild, the Recruiters Guild, and the Wizards Guild. Now there are different recommendations for you to do as far as setting up the game. For new players, they say no real interactive guilds, keep everything basic or resource related. For normal games, use 2 of one type, 1 of another, and then 2 of another, that kind of thing. There's also a type that just says, as long as everybody agrees on it, put whatever guilds you want out there. Each guild has a unique action allows us to do. For instance, the Recruiters Guild allows us to recruit precious labor units like elves and dwarves and bring them to our labor pool. When we start the game, we only have 3 elves and 3 dwarves to work with. Dwarves and elves are traditionally our only sense of labor. That's going to be to actually assign them to place and send them out into the forests and quarries and smiths and all these other things to bring us precious resources. Which brings us to our resource pool here. There are 4 primary resources outside of labor within Belfort. There's the wooden sticks here, there's the stone blocks, the metal bars, and the golden coins. Now each of these is crafted in a way that really kind of sells the idea. You'll notice that these sticks are kind of long, of course they're brown. The stones are just cubes and kind of an off gray. And the metal bars just have a little bit of shine. If you look at them, get them right in the right light, you can actually see them sparkle just a bit. And they're shaped like a bar. And of course the coin is a very obvious coin shape. Very, very, very good. The components in this game are top notch. If you look really closely at the art style, you can tell someone had a really good time when they were designing this thing. Everything looks very handcrafted, but at the same time, all the components are of the highest quality. These guild tokens are very, very durable, very strong. All the cards are very good paper stock, nicely printed, and you can see them easily from afar. I am giving the components alone an A+ in Belfort. And again, all of the different components teach us how to play the game, from our player's mat to the trading post board to the actual collections board itself. They all kind of walk us through the different phases in the game in a way that makes the game very a natural learning experience. I can't say enough how easy this game is to play and how fun it is on top of that. It's one of those games that even in your first playthrough, you're going to be developing strategy and thinking of different scenarios that you can do with different guild possibilities and things like that. When again, on your first playthrough. And normally when I play a game for the first time, I'm just kind of learning the rules, kind of getting my feet wet. Belfort for me was a game that was so easy to learn that I was actually starting to adapt strategy and really think about the fundamentals of what I'm doing versus the other players at the table. And that for me was a lot of fun. So let's talk about the calendar phase. The calendar phase is represented by this black token. It's the easiest and quickest phase to do in the game. We essentially take the token and we put it on the next month available. The game starts with the token off of the board, and then whenever you do the first calendar phase, you'll move it to the first month of spring. There are 3 months in spring, 2 in summer, and 2 in autumn. with the last month of each season being a scoring month, and it's designated by the big red X there. And this board actually has a few different things for us there, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Next up is going to be the placement phase. Now the placement phase is going to be where I can actually take my laborers, the elves and dwarves that I start out with, and place them in planks. Now generally I can put a unit in a plank and just pay the gold cost of whatever, or how much ever it costs, designated in the plank. It's generally 1 gold or 2 gold pieces there, and pay that back to the supply or whomever owns that property at the time, and then I can resolve whatever that is on my action phase. So essentially in the placement phase, I'm only ever putting laborers to work. I'm not actually taking them back yet. So the round is actually going to go in order of turn crest. So whoever has turn crest 1 is going to go first, and then followed by 2, 3, 4, and 5 respectively. The game itself is going to be very balanced in that aspect. That way one player can't get all of the different places. So if I place my first labor on the Recruiters Guild and pick up another elf, I will have the ability to later come back and, or rather my opponents will have the ability to take some of the other buildings, like the Architects Guild, or maybe even the Spies Guild or something like that. After I have made my final move in the placement phase and I have no other moves to make, I'm going to do what's called passing. And essentially, we're going to immediately go to the collection board, and I'm going to distribute my workers throughout the rest of the collection areas. Now, this is going to allow me to, again, get different resources. The first area is going to be the forest, where I can get wood. The next area is the quarry, where I can get stone. The next area is the mine, where I can get metal. And then finally, the other half of the mine, where I can pull gold in. Now, each of these resources is going to be designated to me by the number of workers that I put on there. For instance, if I put 2 elves in the forest, I'm going to get 2 wood back. If I, at the end of the round, if I have the most number of elves in the forest, I'm actually going to get 1 bonus. Some of the elves will actually have a backside, which is a master elf, and it's actually designated by a starburst. And the dwarves have the same thing, which you can see there. Those elves are going to yield 2 of those. They're essentially going to count for 2 of the workers, unless we're talking about the bonus. So if I have 2 normal workers and 1 master, my opponent has a master worker, we're each going to get a base of 2 wood, but I'm going to get 1 more because I have the majority of workers there, and I'll get a bonus. So again, 1 elf for 1 forest, 1 dwarf for 1 stone, an elf and a dwarf for a metal, and an elf or a dwarf for gold. Also on the collection board, I have the ability to recruit for 2 gold, and I can actually place a worker during my placement phase to get the next available crest. So if I'm tired of going last in the game, I can actually pick first and then take that spot. After the collection phase is ending, or at the end of the collection phase, we're actually going to pay our income and collect our income and get our taxes. And we'll get income based on any of the lands we control, properties we control with a gold coin on the name, and also any laborers that we have there. We'll also have to pay taxes based on our standing on the table. When we start the game, the first 5 points will have 0 taxes to pay. The next 5 will have 1, the next 5, 2, and then so on and so forth until finally we are paying 10 gold worth of taxes. So at that point, either we're going to win the game or we're going to be losing a lot of money per turn if we don't have the right economy invested in this. The next phase is going to be the action phase. And the action phase is basically unlimited, and this is an action phase where essentially, if you're first player, you're going to use all of your actions, and then it'll go to the second player, and they're going to use all of their actions. Actions are things like pulling back a worker off of a guild or a plank and redeeming whatever that action is going to be. So, for instance, whenever I pull my recruiter out of the Recruiters Guild, I can then take that extra worker from the supply. There are different units. There's the pub, and the gardens, which actually let us upgrade a worker to a master worker. There are different other buildings that allow us to essentially collect more gold, or maybe even additional resources based on placing the action there. So as long as I have the gold, I can essentially make as many actions as I want. And actions also include things like building properties from my hand, and maybe even visiting the trading post or hiring additional gnomes to come and work for us. So essentially actions are going to be where the majority of our game is going to be placed, whereas the placement phase, whereas the placement phase is going to be where a lot of our planning and kind of resource gathering is going to ensue. After the actions phase, we enter the scoring phase. And the scoring phase is really easy for 4 of the months out of the year. For 3 of them, we'll actually have to go and calculate who got how many points. And there's actually a really good way to track who gets what scoring just looking at the player card, which, if I haven't already mentioned, is very, very nice touch TMG. Really love that. So essentially you'll go and you'll look at each of the different districts and you'll see how many buildings that each color has. And the first place will get 5 points, the third place will get 3 points, and the second place will get 3 points, and the third place will get 1 point based on total number of properties. If there is a tie, players involved in that tie will go to the next rung down. So if it's a 2-way tie for first place, nobody gets first place, and 2 players will get second place, and then that subsequent second place member will have to get bumped down to third place. So along with some of the actions that we can actually do in this, again, we can hire gnomes for 3 gold, which actually will let us put a gnome on a gnome lock on one of the buildings that we control. For instance, if I put this gnome on the inn is actually going to allow us to recruit a dwarf or an elf after that plank is unlocked. So when I put the gnome on the lock, this plank is going to unlock in this building. Some buildings, like the marketplace, are actually going to have spots for 2 planks. So essentially I can recruit 2 gnomes on there. If I recruit a gnome and I have no available planks, that gnome is wasted and goes back to the supply. So here at the bottom we've got Crazy Ord's trading post. And this is going to be a spot for us to visit once per turn for a buy and sell, which actually lets us trade our resources for gold or buy different resources with our gold. And this can actually increase the number of visits if we build the market and place a gnome on it in order to increase the number of visits we can have per turn. Which leads us to actually our permit cards. At the last action that we can take, we can actually increase the number of cards that are in our hand by buying one of these permits for 1 gold. Now I could buy any one of the 3 face-up permits and then immediately replace it, or I can test my luck and just take one of whatever the top card is on the deck. Now the different permits and buildings here are a key point to this game. I'm going to essentially trade my resources to build these buildings somewhere in the 5 districts of Belfort in order to maximize the points I can get at those scoring phases. So that's it for Belfort. Again, I think Belfort is a really fun gateway game. It's going to be a really good one. For me, I think this is a must-buy for your shelves. I think it's a game that you're going to get a lot of different people able to play, and I think it's going to fit in most gaming groups. I think Jay and Sen have got a really good game here, and other than just the theme, it does provide you with a good immersion to this world of Belfort. The rule book is hilariously written, yet really easy to follow. And that's one thing I've seen with a lot of Tasty Minstrel games, is that you could just read the rules and just start playing the game. Belfort's not hard to learn. It is again a lot of fun. At the end of the day, it's a worker placement game, right? But it's one that actually offers plenty of avenues for strategy, and it's not just I'm gonna block you from getting this resource that you need. With the way of passing your turn, depending on when you pass, allows you to gain additional benefits. Also, the added mechanics of bringing in different guilds each time you play offers a lot of replayability. Check out Belfort at your local game store. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please thumb up this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back next week for a look at the expansion to Belfort.